This next guy who's about to join us may have saw the best team in the country this past weekend.
He watched the Dolphins play?
No.
Oh.
No. Georgia's still number one in the AP poll, but Texas jumped up to 2. They play each other in week 8. Texas looked mighty good.
They did. Joel Klatt joins us at this time each week, courtesy of MyBookie.ag. Code next round. You saw he and Gus and Jenny there in the big house. First of all, Klatt, hello. How are you today?
Yeah, good morning. How are you? I'm sure you're riding high with your Dolphins right now.
I pulled one out on that one. Did not deserve to win that game, but that's the way the NFL works. Thankfully, we did.
The NFL, there's no style points don't exist.
Nope.
They don't count. It's nothing is subjective about it. You get the W and you move on.
That is right. That is right. Especially when you can get one at home and not lose a home game. You watched Texas, and boy, did they look good. I mean, I do a show earlier in the day on Mondays with Brandon Marcello, and I just said, boy, in that first quarter or that first half, there was no doubt who the best team was in that game. I mean, you did not go to halftime wondering, am I seeing a fluke? That was decisive.
And right, I mean, early in the second quarter, in my mind in the booth, I'm like, the outcome of the game is not in suspense.
Nope.
Michigan was not coming back. There was nothing that would suggest that they were going to all of a sudden find something offensively. And that wasn't just because of their issues, although there are many on their offense. It was because of the Texas's of mainly the secondary. I thought Andrew Makuba, the transfer from Clemson, was a huge addition for Texas. Obviously, losing those 2 defensive tackles from last year, Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, that was a question that I was the entire offseason. I couldn't wait to see them play this game specifically because you know what Michigan's MO is going to be. Now, I don't think Michigan's offensive line is really anywhere near what they were the last couple of years. So did we get an actual test of what Texas's front is going to be? I'm not sure. But I do know that secondary is vastly improved from a year ago. Vastly. They were 116th in pass defense. And with Makuba back there, Jade Barron on one side in terms of a corner, Muhammad on the other, a young corner that I think is really talented. That defense is very good. And then on the offensive side, guys, that's the exact style of team that I'm like, well, yeah, they can win a national championship. Experience up front, over 120 starts up front. Most of those guys are 3-year starters. There's draft picks littering the offensive line. You've got basically a 3-year starter at quarterback who probably right now if I had to put a vote in today, it would be my Heisman Trophy winner. He's right now the best player, best quarterback. Ewers was on top of it. He was quick. And then you've got and then you've got the transfer receivers that obviously, but then you've got the game plan. And guys, the game plan was brilliant. They didn't run away from the defensive tackles of Michigan. They strategically made them tired. And it wasn't just about the tempo with which they were running plays. It's that everywhere that those guys lined up, Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, Sark just went opposite. Perimeter, quick game, get them tired. They ran off the field to substitute. And then it was like, boom, here we go downhill. Right at the backup defensive tackles. Sark's on top of it. I came away from that game with no question in my mind that Texas can win the national championship. Don't know if they will, but they can definitely win the national championship.
I agree. And just the way he schemed up to get it to the tight end. What's his name? Gunnar Helm.
Helm.
Yeah, he had a big day. I love watching Sark in his schemes. That 2020 year in Tuscaloosa, I just sat back and watched him with all those toys. And I'm not saying he's got that many toys, but
probably not.
But he's able,
not as much as that team. I mean, that team was historically good. But to your point, yes, like regardless of how good those skill position players are, he uses them incredibly well. Yeah. Even getting Ryan Wingo, that's a toy, right? The 5-star kid, the wide receiver. He gets the ball in a little, what I call a Fargo reverse. It's a little wide receiver reverse. Gone 55 yards. I'm like, okay.
And Quinn is just so calm. He's so mature. I like that team a lot. But for Michigan moving forward, and this isn't particular. I mean, Davis Warren's a great story. And Orji is, struggling in the passing game and all that. But in the world we live in, and we're discussing this today about Auburn as well after, their loss to Cal, if you are a program that wants to compete and you feel like you have a deficit at quarterback, how are you not in the transfer portal quarterback market? And it didn't look like Michigan was in that market, and Auburn said they were not in that market. How are you not in the market if you think maybe you have a deficit at quarterback? I mean, I look at Cam Ward.
Question.
I look at Cam Ward.
Oh, he's going to be the example everybody points to. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Ward's going to. By the way, McCord could be that example.
Exactly.
Like, he's playing well at Syracuse.
Yes.
Okay, so I think it's easy for us to gravitate towards the examples that are working. What about the examples that maybe aren't working? You know, and that does happen. You know, Tyler Van Dyke has been that. Graham Mertz has been that.
Grayson McCall at NC State is not.
Yeah, Grayson McCall right now. You know, so I know I very rarely am speechless. I think that we on the outside can view definitively the transfer portal as only a fix. And in reality, the transfer portal has both fixes and failures within the transfer portal. And it's incumbent on you as a staff to try to figure out whether you're going to have a guy that can fix or fit within your locker room, or whether that's going to go the opposite direction. On Michigan's side, I can tell you that, like, they're just not a big transfer portal program. Even last year, the guys that they get from the transfer portal are supplemental. You know, they get Jayshawn Barham from Maryland. He was a really good player and a solid linebacker and helps their defense. There's no doubt. But I don't think that they're a program that wants to bring somebody in. That's a tight-knit culture now, and just bringing in a quarterback could be difficult. You also don't know, like, so for instance, they had a very highly recruited kid, maybe not, you know, the best quarterback in the country, but Jaden Davis signed for them as a young player. Well, you don't know if you bring somebody in the transfer portal, does he leave?
Yeah.
You know, so like you're looking at the depth and you're starting to look at next year, because at times, and we're starting to see this play out now, you dabble, even if it's for a fix and it's not even a quarterback, but you get in the transfer portal. All of a sudden, in subsequent years, you have to do that time and time and time and time again. And so maybe it's long game, but it certainly looks like in Auburn's case and Michigan's case that they're playing this year with one hand tied behind their back because they are not getting what I would consider like requisite quarterback play to play at the top of their conference. And we'll see how it plays out from here.
I will make the point that a week ago, Riley Leonard would have been included in this discussion.
That's what I was about to say. And now Riley Leonard doesn't look like he can do it at Notre Dame.
Wow. Speaking of Notre Dame, you talk about, I mean, how quickly that all like changes. Because guys, think about this. Now think about this. We had them in the playoff last week. We're sitting here and it's like, oh yeah, Notre Dame. Notre Dame's in the playoff. Now, if they lose another game, maybe if they don't lose another game, they have no ammunition on the schedule. So in a subjective committee, how are they getting in? Like for instance, if they were to win every game on their schedule and still lose to USC at the end of the year, 10-2, do they win an argument with any 10-2 Big Ten or SEC team?
No,
I don't think so.
Not a chance.
Yeah.
Nope.
Not a chance.
Yep.
So all of a sudden they go from, basically 2 feet in the playoff to literally untying the rope on the dock and shoving the boat out to sea. It's like it happened that quickly. And I would be remiss if you didn't at least bring up, guys, remember these are still 18 to 22 year olds. And these 18 and 22 to 22 year olds, they've always been distracted because they're 18 to 22 year olds. But now we're throwing on portal. You've got chemistry problems, and it's more difficult to build chemistry within your program. You've got NIL dollars. You've got social media. You've got more rat poison out there than ever before. And you can tell the teams that are just taking the rat poison, like the scene in Dumb and Dumber. Like the guys, they just give him all the rat poison. He takes it and he just dies right on the floor. And you can see that. Notre Dame didn't play with anywhere close to the same intensity, execution, detail, effort that they did against Texas A&M. Now, that being said, maybe Texas A&M is just the habitual fly in the ointment. Every year, A&M plays some game early in the season, and because of our outsized expectations for a team that is constantly mediocre, we overrate the team that either plays well or beats Texas A&M. Think about it, guys. We did it with Miami last year. App State beat A&M. A&M played a 3-point game against a 2-win Colorado team, 10-7 a few years ago. I look at A&M and I'm like, man, every year they do this to us in September. They play some sort of game that the App State beat them a couple years ago. Like A&M is like the fly in the ointment in college football. I blame all the SEC pundits.
It's us. Yes.
I'm blaming you.
Yes,
I'm blaming you.
yes.
By the way, I don't know if you noticed in the AP poll, 6 of the it's basically an SEC power rating, and Ohio State the top 7 in the AP poll.
SEC power.
Yeah, I did see that. They conveniently forgot that Miami looks great. They conveniently forgot that USC beat LSU. I firmly believe at some point LSU will just be ranked above USC because they're in the SEC. Well, why wouldn't they be ranked ahead of USC? It's that game didn't exist. Do games in September even exist? Dunaway?
We taught you first and second grade, if you're an alphabet school, L comes before U.
That's right.
LSU, USC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Joel Klatt is with us, courtesy of MyBookie.ag. Code next round. When you sign up, they'll double your initial deposit. They're at MyBookie.ag.
Nothing to see here about the 1-point game with South Florida. Clearly the fourth best team in the country.
I'm getting
nothing to see here.
I'm getting to that.
They play in the SEC. Look at the badge. Clearly it was fine.
42-16. It was a blowout.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. Dunaway. Listen, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Nothing to see here.
I was too busy covering my team to watch that game.
Yes.
I have to vote.
Yeah.
I have to vote before midnight, Klatt. I was at a different game, and I had to call in my vote real quick.
But you'll watch it. I don't know how much you've been able to watch. You've got Alabama this week against Wisconsin, 11 o'clock on Fox on the big noon kick. So as you watch that game, as soon, they thought they could survive that game without Pritchett at right tackle, right? They already don't have Proctor at left tackle.
He was a little banged up.
He was banged up.
Yeah.
It's amazing, though, Joel. Watch it. As soon as Pritchett comes in, magically Alabama can run right all they want. It was crazy.
Oh, yeah, it's like weird. It's like good players up front actually matter.
I know. I mean, they run right. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Listen, I hear you. There was some concerning things for Bama, and yet, I'm being a bit sarcastic because, guys, I mean, almost the exact same thing happened last year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that was a little bit different circumstance. I will go to my grave believing to my core that last year's game was Nick Saban, not a middle finger to the fan base, but just like okay, here you go. You guys think I'm playing the wrong quarterback? Here you go. Watch this.
Right.
To my grave, I will believe that so that he could take the pressure off of Milroe and they could move forward from that. Because after that game, and I think we talked about it last year. After that game, no one questioned it. It was just like, well, he's our guy, and we'll just get better and develop because of that. So a little bit different circumstances than this struggle. It is a change in offensive philosophy. Let's be fair. I mean, what Kalen DeBoer really wants to do is a bit of a change, and I think that we're going to have to live with the fact that there will be growing pains, and they kept trying to take those shots and trying to throw the ball down the field, and it's not quite there yet. That doesn't mean it won't get there at some point. I do believe Alabama is going to be better at wide receiver than they have been in previous years, in usually the last 2 years, because they were so great, historically great for a number of years. And then the last 2, I just didn't think that they had the wide receivers. Now I do think that they've got that. And they'll get better. I'm not as concerned, but they have to develop a little bit. This is still a work in progress, and Kalen DeBoer's offense will work. It's just a matter of all the reps needed in order to make something like that work. There's so many downfield post-snap reads in his offense. It's not the true Tennessee, kind of downfield read offense, but there's so much that has to happen in terms of being on the same page, quarterback and wide receiver down the field. And those guys last year at Washington were so good at it and experienced. And it'll take time, but I'm unconcerned about Alabama.
Yeah, and you get them this week. We're all excited to be able to watch our favorite analysts do an Alabama game, Alabama and Wisconsin.
That's
no, I'm serious.
For a second.
Yeah. You remember, did you watch the start where Gus said, clean on the inside, clean on the outside? Such a good line. I loved it. Klatt's heard that also. He goes, look at my guy, Joel Klatt. Clean on the inside, clean on the outside. Such a good line.
By the way,
I love Gus. I love me some Gus
I
Johnson.
do too. And listen, I no longer, for the kids, Gentleman Quarterly, GQ, I no longer subscribe to that, but I did when I was younger. I guess, and there was a time it was on GQ that it crossed patterns, stripes and
Gus loves some of that, yeah.
Gus threw all of them into one outfit this past weekend.
He told me one time, he's like, you gotta wear more patterns. And I just looked at him and just shook my head. I was like, no.
He had all the patterns on.
Every one of them.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's like they can't clash if they're all there.
That's right. In down in Louisiana, we call that gumbo. He had a gumbo outfit on. I'm still worried about Alabama's young secondary. I've seen Wisconsin briefly twice. They don't seem to have the downfield passing and the quarterback right now to really challenge that secondary. Is that fair?
Yeah, I wish, for all of our sakes that this was like a real top half of the Big Ten team and we could really see. Like last week, that's what was fun about last week.
Yeah.
I don't know what Michigan's going to end up being. I think their floor becomes 7-5, Michigan, rather than 9-3 after seeing them play. But having said that's the only downside of this game is that I just don't have a ton of confidence that Wisconsin can threaten Alabama. Now, after last week, maybe that's totally wrong. I know it's going to be a great environment. I can't wait to just see, are we seeing – I'm going to go back to the previous answer because to me, I want to – and I haven't looked at the tape yet. I'm about to do that. In fact, my natural sequence is right after this is when I actually sit down and really dive in. I can't wait to see. I'm going to list down all the mistakes that I see from the offense. My biggest takeaway will be, do they make the same mistakes twice, or are they correcting those, and how quickly can they correct them? Because that's the mark of a really good team. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody plays poorly at some point. Now, how can you minimize that? And then how can you correct those mistakes as quickly as possible? So that's what I'm going to be looking for. And then, I think the physicality up front, because what I saw from Texas and what I would just expect from Georgia is that they're going to play physical up front on their offensive line. And Texas's offensive line is real. And so to see this Wisconsin defensive front a week after seeing that Texas offensive line, and just to think to myself, do they measure up? Does the Alabama defensive front seven measure up to what they're going to have to face if they want to win the SEC and maybe the national championship? That'll be a great question.
Klatt, before you go, I don't know how much you got to see because you were probably traveling. Your old school play Nebraska.
Buddy, the internet in these planes is incredible.
Yeah.
So I had the TV in the seat back, and then I put my iPad up and I start streaming the YouTube TV, and I got the 4 quad. So I'm watching 6 games on the way home.
That's the way to do it. Your old school Colorado got housed by Nebraska, and
you're cutting out a little bit. I can't.
I got to imagine, though. I mean, at some point, Prime's got to take a long, hard look in the mirror at what this team is. I don't know what they are. Yeah, Shedeur leave the field early, which people are making a big deal with him going to the locker room 2 minutes to go in the game. It looked like Travis and Shedeur were a little upset, getting on coaches. I mean, this feels like a team that, from a distance looking, it feels like Colorado's kind of teetering on the edge right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. It's really sad to see, to be honest with you, because I think that they have a lot of potential. They're the same team that they were last year for the most part. They're the same team on offense, uninspired game plan, no creativity. no ability to try to create easier situations for the quarterback. If I was Shador, I'd be pissed. It's like that was the plan, to sit there in static formations and just drop back and not be able to protect. Like that's not sustainable. It's just not. There's no movement. There's no formation. Like we brought up Sark earlier in the interview. You think about Lane, Sark, Lincoln Riley, Chip Kelly, and you throw any of the great offensive coordinators that you want into this conversation. What do? They create conflict for the defense pre-snap and post-snap, both times. It can't just be one or the other, or else the defense can just lock in on what's going on. They study tape too. And there are things that Colorado is trying to do that it's just like it's so static that it's very easy for the defense to get a beat on what they're trying to do and then game plan against it. And they can't protect. That's the offensive side. Defense, they actually play pretty hard. The second straight week, they haven't really given up points in the second half, given themselves a chance. So the defensive side, I feel bad for, because those guys, while not the best talent, in college football, they're playing their butts off and trying to give themselves a chance. And then the offense rolls out there, and it just ain't it, man. It ain't it. And the chemistry things and the attitude things, that's what's alarming. Because the quickest way to be defeated is to be distracted. And the quickest way to be distracted is to feel like everyone's not bought in. And, we'll see where it goes from here. I'm hoping that they can right the ship, and because there's a lot of talent there, guys. Travis is incredible. Shador is really good, but they got to protect him.
Yeah, it looks like Shiloh's going to be sidelined for a little bit with a hand, so that's unfortunate. But I don't know. I mean, last year they got housed by Oregon and never recovered, and that was pretty embarrassing Saturday night as well. So we'll see what happens moving forward. You will see Klatt and Gus and the All-American girl for the Bama-Wisconsin game. Fox 6, jump around at the end of the third quarter. Fox 6, 11 o'clock in Birmingham.
I hope it's still a game at that point. I know you guys probably don't, but just for the environment of jump around, if it's a close game, jump around's incredible.
Yeah, I loved it. First game back from the pandemic.
I cried.
We did that one, the Penn State game. Yeah. Man, that was incredible.
No, Brown doesn't cry. I cry all the time. I was in tears. Brown was in tears.
We were back. I mean, that was the we were back moment when they did jump around.
And you guys handled it so well and showed Jenny, the All-American girl bouncing around. And it was really good, really good. Just let the crowd be the crowd.
That's right. All right, we'll all see it Saturday at 11. Thank you, Klatt. Have a great week.
You bet. Bama fans, it's your dream.
That's right.
We're back calling the game for Bama. You guys loved us so much against Texas 2 years ago.
Barn burner.
Here we go.
Barn burner against Texas.
Won that game though.
Alabama won.
You brought back Fowler and Herbstreit and lost at home last week. I'm just saying. Yeah, big games. You're 1-0 with Klatt.
That's right. That's
I don't know what do you want from me?
See you, Klatt. Thank you.
Later, boys.
All right, Joel with us on the mybookie.ag visit. He does that every single week. Mybookie.ag. Monday Night Football tonight. Still get on board with that. Make your initial deposit. They double it at mybookie.ag when you use code NEXTROUND.